Welcome back to Adventure Repeat. Nice to see you back with us. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, comment, tell us what you think about it. Because if you're new here, there's more great content to come, so stick around. So, here we are to talk about why. Why did we pick the 2024 Chevrolet 2500HD in the 6.6-liter gas engine? So, we did a test drive on all of the trucks. We test drove them all, we tried them all. I loved the Ram Rebel 2500. Awesome truck on the inside, set up very nicely, very similar to this 2500 HD, just a few minor differences, mostly with this vertical touchscreen. Truck sat up nice, sounded great, got up and went very fast. It was very stable. It sounded great. Love the truck. Problem was, it just rode terrible. Even there's the gaps in the road, just the normal bumps that a normal vehicle should be able to absorb and just go with. You felt it. It was a very bad bump to it, and that was just not something we could work with. I asked him, like, why is that? And like, well, it's the off-road package. It's going to ride worse. I'm like, well, I don't think that's the case, because an off-road package should be able to absorb the bumps a little bit better than that. Especially, it should be better than a normal factory truck if the shocks are tuned and things like that. So, to me, if it rides that poorly, I really can't justify spending that kind of money for something I just don't like driving. Cool thing was, they had it on the lot for 12 grand off, so it must have been sitting there for a long time and nobody wanted it. It was dark blue. It was spectacular. I loved it, but just can't get over the ride quality. So that's what turned us away from the Dodge, and that's okay. We tried Fords. Just not, they don't ride that great. The suspension geometry, running radius arms in the front end, it's a very 80s and 90s technology. They should have been able to do something a lot better, because the Dodge runs a 5-link, which is great. They're still running radius arms with a ball joint track bar, and the crossover steering is just very poorly designed because they're tied together on the passenger side. So if you just got one ball joint bed, you got to separate everything. It's kind of unnecessary, and the suspension geometry is not perfect, so you still get push-pull steering. I've spent a good chunk of time working on newer Ford Super Duties, and I kind of know my way around them, and I'm just not impressed by how they're designed and engineered. Interior cab was okay. This is just an LTZ, but it's a very base model LTZ. So the only thing that makes LTZ is the front headlight buckets and the fact that it's got leather seats and the up-level dash. That's really it. So other than that, it's base model. No moonroof, no sunroof, no rear sliding window, no fancy seat controls, things like that. Yeah, it's got heated and cooled seats, but what separates it apart in the interior is when you get in the Ford in the same trim level, is everything's very plasticky. The dash is just a plastic dash. The door panels are just plastic. These are actually leather wrapped, or whatever this leather is. So it feels more like a nicer, higher end truck without having to pay for it like you would in a Super Duty, where you have to pay a lot more money. Also, what turned us away from the Super Duty is you pretty much had the Godzilla engine or a Power Stroke. I don't want a Power Stroke. I don't need to pay for that kind of thing. And I spent enough time with Power Strokes, I'm just not happy with it. And they have their primary fuel filter hanging below the frame rail midship of that truck. That's just waiting to get hit by a rock or a tree and just broken off, and then you'd be dead alongside the road. So just not with that. And I don't need a big block engine. I really don't. The fuel economy is not that great. Yeah, it makes power, but what this small block Chevy gas engine makes compared to that Godzilla engine, it's pretty negligible what the difference is. So I just didn't need that. The dash was okay. It wasn't great, but not how I'm used to and how I played with it enough where we just were not impressed by it, and also had a very poor dealership experience with them too. So we were on the Chevy. We test drove. We liked it. We've had enough Chevys where I'm pretty comfortable with how they're built and designed. I really like it. The independent front suspension is not, I know they say it's not as strong as a Super Duty axle or a solid axle in a Dodge or things like that, but I haven't broke my independent front suspension. I beat the crap out of all my trucks. It handles just fine, even with plowing. There's plenty of trucks out there, plows on them with independent front suspension. You take care of your stuff, things will take care of you, and it's okay. The technology has gotten a lot better from back in the 90s when independent front suspension was first a thing in trucks. So that was another key thing that it didn't bother me. But having independent front suspension gave this truck a better ride. It was comparable to Ford. It was night and day difference compared to the Dodge. So it was a nicer ride. This has the auto track transfer case, so it locks and goes, so my wife can drive this in the winter and she don't have to worry about it. It just kicks into 4-wheel drive and goes whenever she needs it to. The Super Duty, we'd have to lock hubs and then have to go that process. So driving around locked hubs is extra wear on the front drivetrain that's not necessary. So having this actually makes it a lot nicer and more similar to the Tahoe that she's used to. So that was one of the key things we liked. Another key note is, why did we choose a gasoline engine over the diesel? First thing was price point. $10,000 to $12,000 less for a gasoline engine versus diesel. Yeah, you can buy a lot of gas. You can buy a lot of gas for the price difference in just fuel economy. So for us, $12,000 less, because this is an expensive truck anyways, so have to save us 12 grand. It was kind of worth it for us in that aspect. And then there's also plenty of videos out there that people tow and compare. The fast lane truck, he's one of those guys that's done the test. He did the tow test, compared between the two. Fuel economy was like 2 miles per gallon difference, something like that. It was very, very negligible. And yes, in the mountains and things like that, if you're pulling uphill or going downhill, the diesel did a lot better. It got up to speed a lot faster and handled the downgrade better because of the exhaust brakes and things like that. But we're in Michigan. We don't have that many mountains, so that's okay. And honestly, we took our half-ton Tahoe, the 2015 Tahoe, and we pulled our camper across the country with it. It handled just fine in a half-ton truck with a smaller engine. So to me, to have a Duramax with the added cost, oil changes alone are ungodly expensive. Your filter costs are over $100 in this, that, and then you got oil on top of this. It's like a $12 filter and 8 quarts of oil. So the regular maintenance of it, it's a lot cheaper. And as a day-to-day driver for me, having DEF and to maintain the DEF system properly, it just wasn't going to work. So having a gas engine made more sense for us. Yeah, I'm not going to have the power that a diesel does, but for us, we can get by with the gas and save a lot of money in the long run. So it works out for us. Yes, you can get more miles out of a diesel engine. It can last longer, but we live in Michigan. You can get 20 years out of a truck before it rots away with rust. You're doing pretty good. So by those numbers, that puts this truck around 250,000 miles, what we normally drive on average. So my 2003, I finally retired at 261,000 miles. So I kind of know those numbers are about right, and that truck was still holding on, but it was due. There was a lot of rust on that truck. So that is why we chose the Chevrolet compared to the Ford and the Dodge. We did our due diligence. We compared everything. Price points, they were all about the same. The Dodge initially started as more expensive, as an $81,000 truck. They had 12 grand off, so that put it at the same price point as the Chevrolet. So that was the neat thing about that. It was saving me money, but the ride quality was terrible. I didn't want it. And the Super Duty, they also said that they didn't have a Tremor package on the lot, but they said the Tremor package rode worse. So that's kind of a depressing downside, why they're making these off-road trucks ride worse. But I didn't get to test drive a ZR2 in the 2500 HD, so there just aren't any around in this area at this time. Not a big deal. I don't need a ZR2 because I can put lifting tires on this if I felt like it. But this truck already sits up a lot higher than my old 3/4 ton, so this would be very nice. This is why we ended up on what we did, and honestly, this Gideon interior is actually kind of nice. I really did not mind it. At first, my first thought was, I'm not sure about that. I usually wanted a black on black, but went there and looked at it in person. It's great. It actually looks very nice. I've really been impressed with it. This has been a smooth riding truck. Haven't had no issues so far. Got 500 miles on it, and I have so far set the record for fuel economy at 19.1 miles per gallon in a 3/4 ton truck. No cylinder deactivation, nothing like that. this truck sits up high, so it's a big old wind sail. To get 19 miles per gallon on a 3/4 ton, I think that's pretty great. My normal day-to-day driving to work gets me 16 is what it tells me on the dash, so I'm pretty okay with that. It's not numbers that the Tahoe was getting, but that is a smaller engine with cylinder deactivation, so I'm pretty impressed with that. And it should get better over time as the engine breaks in and all the systems break in and start functioning as they should, because we're only at 484 miles right now. We got some time to break it in and go that route. So far, initially, I'm impressed. I like the truck. It's been working out great for us. We've taken a road trip with the kids. Once we get this engine broke in, we'll do another tow test, see how it handles compared to the Tahoe, and go from there. So be sure to like the video, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what else you want to hear about. Subscribe if you haven't already. There's more great content to come. So enjoy. Remember, have a great adventure.